Hi there, busy moms. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video on how I organize my fridge. I would go to the fridge, open the door, and be completely overwhelmed. If I had to describe my haphazard fridge, I would say it was a
shit show, man, just to tell you the truth.
The front layer was the newest fruits and vegetables, tofu, pickles, condiments that I had just bought, and it crammed into any crevice I could find. The layer behind that was full of food that I had the intentions of eating, but the opportunity never presented itself in the 21 meals a week that I had to make. Okay. Behind that was layers of food that intentions of eating had long since abandoned, but the feelings of guilt over throwing out food that could surely feed a starving nation, that guilt remains solid. And finally, the last layer, the food that certainly couldn't be called food anymore. As you could probably predict, this organizational style came with some challenges. I'd forget what was in the fridge and buy ingredients I already had. I would fear what would greet me if I opened the container, so I'd procrastinate and I would leave them sealed, which led to a vicious cycle of things growing, smells getting worse, textures reaching new levels of sliminess. With this poorly thought out system, more food landed in the compost than it did in our bellies. I thought the answer was obvious. Buy a second fridge, which turned out to be very effective at doubling my problem. I started researching how other busy moms kept their fridges organized. Honestly, I even daydreamed about inventing my own style of fridge, figuring that the problem was in the design of the standard household refrigerator. Then I met my boyfriend's parents, and guys, get this. They raised 6 kids, have the biggest house I've ever been in, and they don't have a full-size fridge in their kitchen. What they do have instead is a mini fridge. One of those fridges that the rest of us use as a beverage fridge to supplement our regular fridge. What made them make this scandalous decision? Was it some form of self-inflicted punishment? Or was it a design flaw, like the story of an architect who designed a building and forgot to include washrooms? As expected, when a person who is struggling to master the efficient use of a full-size fridge comes across a mini fridge in a mansion, I was left to deal with an array of emotions. Disbelief, anger, sadness. One thing I couldn't deny, I was struggling and they were not. Was the solution possibly a smaller fridge? I couldn't fathom the thought of buying a mini fridge to take the space of my current fridge because I am obsessed about things fitting perfectly in the spot that they were designed for. And building a whole new kitchen to accommodate a smaller fridge seemed a little insane, even for me. Plus, my boyfriend said no. It was so obvious, have less stuff in the fridge. Then it occurred to me, having less stuff is the number one rule I have for keeping my house clean. Would the principles that I brag about to keep my house clean apply to keeping my fridge from being a cold mess? Rule number 1, have less stuff. Rule number 1, broken down into smaller rules for clarification. Go without, whenever possible. To be clear, I'm not a martyr who thrives on self-deprivation, but I will stand by my decision to not use a frivolous dehydrator that in order to use requires me to lovingly peel apart a stalk of kale, lightly massage the dark green leaves, strategically place them on a tray so airflow can circulate at the optimal rate to evenly dehydrate the pieces, gingerly peel them off the tray to be flipped at precisely the right moment, waiting hours more, all in the name of achieving the perfect amount of crisp on a kale chip that I will spend exactly 1 nanosecond enjoying. Nope. If I want something crispy, I'll eat a carrot. And if I truly must have kale chips, I'll go to the store and buy them. I'll spend the $40 an ounce foregoing the need for a dehydrator. Side note, I've heard that saffron is the most expensive ingredient, but I'm pretty sure they overlooked the cost of kale chips. Rule 2. Don't buy something when I already have something and I haven't even finished using that something. Deplete things completely before replacing them. Store stuff at the store and only buy what I need for the immediate present. Have you ever bought 2 bottles of dish soap because, well, you're a sucker for a BOGO deal? So you get home and you store the second one. Okay. Then later, you run out of the soap, you truck to the store, and oh my goodness, there's a BOGO deal.
So you buy it, bring it home, go to store it, and then you find all the other BOGO deals that you have purchased in the past.
Say this with me. A deal isn't a deal if I wouldn't buy it if it didn't have the word deal attached to it. Let this mantra keep you safe from the evil path to limitless hoarding. When there was too much stuff in my fridge, I naively believed that the shelves underneath the stuff were sparkling clean. But every single time I cleared out my fridge, I'd always be flabbergasted to find some mysterious substance adhered to the crevices in my fridge. You might wonder why I wasn't perplexed at where the goop had come from. How had I not noticed that a container that should have had something in it was empty when I went to retrieve it? In my defense, as a mom of 3 kids, going to the fridge and finding a container empty, it's pretty much a given. Now that my fridge has less stuff in it, I can clean and sanitize it regularly, avoiding having to chisel away spilled food that is the breeding ground for omnipresent microbes. Rule 3. Only keep things in the fridge that belong in the fridge. Other experts might take this opportunity to insert here a chart that lists the optimal climate for each fruit and vegetable. Or perhaps in an effort to live by the give a man a fish philosophy, they might be tempted to explain the scientific reasons why a plant will last longer on the counter versus the fridge. Teaching you to look at the molecular structure of a potato before committing to the decision to keep them in a cool, dark place. But I'm just going to tell you an easy way to know how to store your food. Just mimic how it's kept at the grocery store. The store owner has a lot to gain by keeping vegetables in a way that keeps them the freshest the longest. Follow her lead and you will increase the life expectancy of your spinach. Rule 4, containers contain things. If all my veggies don't fit in the veggie keeper, then I know I have too many veggies. I use this rule as a guide to contain myself when purchasing food. If I don't have room for it at home, then I just don't buy it. Rule 5. If I was to see it today in the store in its current condition and I just would not buy it, then it needs to leave my home. Also, using this strategy, I can completely avoid my neurotic tendencies to second guess my decision to dispose of a jar of grainy mustard I bought, thinking it would elevate my sandwich to drool-worthy status, only to find out that it just tastes like crushed marbles. Rule 6. Don't delay throwing something out, hoping that the significant time lapse will alleviate the guilt factor. I used to tenaciously pack up overcooked carrots and lovingly store them in my fridge, but some deep, all-knowing part of me knew that those carrots were never going to fulfill their destiny of nourishing my family. However, riddled with guilt, I persevered with storing the carrots. When I'd make a meal, I'd open the container, pretend to consider eating them. Then, with all the feelings of guilt and shame I could muster, I'd close the lid with a well-intended promise of later chopping them up and using them in a hearty vegetable soup. Then, weeks later, by the sweet mercy of God and science, the decision of whether to toss the carrots or not was made for me. By this time, green fuzz speckled with black mold had adhered to the unrecognizable carrots and spread relentlessly to all edges of the container. Finally, relief washed over my entire body as I fully accepted that the only thing left to do was to throw the carrots out. Delaying the decision to toss out the carrots was not without its consequences. The container, a casualty of my inability to make hard choices at a pivotal moment, also got tossed. though not without a 3-day leech bath first to see if I could salvage it. I'd like to say that I learned my lesson, but I'd also like to say that brownies are a health food, and that's not happening either. I continued to delay decisions, harboring feelings of guilt, and allowing the passing of time to be both my greatest friend and my worst enemy. But eventually, I got tired of this self-defeating and container-destroying way of life, and I decided to throw out leftovers. Yes, I know, this sounds like a huge contradiction to my zero waste philosophy that you will find on the very first page of my recently released book, The Busy Mom's Guide to a Clean Kitchen. And this probably does sound like a shameless plug for my book, now available on lulu.com for $25 plus tax and shipping. The zero waste philosophy is exactly what I use when throwing out leftovers. The immediate disposal of the unwanted food allows me to learn from my mistakes in the moment, making it less likely that I'll make that mistake again. Like when I buy turnip after seeing it transformed on my Instagram feed by an eager vegan chef into perfectly crisp, delightful looking fries. I diligently work with the turnip I just bought until it deceptively resembles picture-perfect golden thick-cut fries, only to take a bite and be reminded that turnip will never be a decadent treat and will forever be what can only be described as evil unearthed. Having the moxie to immediately throw out the vile turnip teaches me to never buy turnip again. Even if I was to find out that eating half a cup would fill my nutritional calcium needs for a year, I remember the anguish involved from the last time I bought it, and I can confidently walk away knowing that I just don't want it. Rule 7, keep all similar items together. When my fridge was disheveled, I would begrudgingly use a thoroughly unenjoyable search and retrieve method when making meals. Say, for example, I needed condiments for a meal. Using this search method, I would hunt for each item, loading up one of my arms with the bottles as I located and extracted them. Simultaneously, I'd use my free hand to shuffle items in the fridge around, praying that I'd find the missing bottle of ketchup before the other bottles I was struggling to hold managed to slide out of my grasp. Now, I keep all condiments in a bucket, so I can easily grab said bucket, put it on the kitchen counter, use what I need, and then return it to the fridge when I'm done. Rule 8, everything should be easy to see at a glance and easy to grab. I have a side-by-side fridge freezer in my kitchen, and in order to open the fridge door, I have to brace one hand against the freezer door portion of the appliance, then tightly wrap my other hand around the fridge door handle and pull, exerting enough force to break the vacuum seal that the airlock created. Once I've successfully gotten into the fridge, I have expended more energy than I have allotted for making one meal. And my resolve to nourish my family with a hearty home-cooked meal starts to diminish. At this point, having to move 15 containers before I find the broccoli that I'm looking for might be the tipping point between eating a nutrient-dense stir-fry that night and resorting to feeding my family a frozen pizza to provide sustenance. It's not that moving a barrier of containers is extraordinarily difficult, although not having to move them is infinitely easier. Each container not only holds food, but also with it a decision. What is this? What do I need to do about it? And making decisions depletes energy. At this point, the discerning criteria for where to put any container will involve factoring in the probability of accidental spillage of a poorly placed container. Essentially, I'm looking to avoid the risk of stir-fry sauce running down the side of a container, sticking to everything in its path until it pools on the bottom of the fridge floor and effectively forms an unbreakable union between the drawer and the bottom of the fridge. Rule 9, keep things in the most logical place. Some things were stored in my fridge based on where my mom stored things in her fridge. And she probably based that on where her mom stored things. And she probably based them on, for all I know, a whim. Once I realized how this organizational habit of mindless compliance was affecting me, I made the decision to change it. Dismissing the value of historical data when deciding on the placement of ketchup allowed me to arrange my fridge according to relevant criteria. The small shelves in the door are prime real estate. and are ideal for items used throughout the day. I also made the prudent decision to use the fridge door for small items that used to get lost if placed anywhere else in the fridge. I have a shelf for protein, which in our house is tofu and beans. The main shelf of the fridge is stocked with fresh, ready-to-eat veggies. This is a subtle form of eat your veggies propaganda that the mom and me fully endorses. And I have another shelf for our ready-to-eat meals. Veggies that aren't prepped yet, they are kept in the bottom drawer. Okay, so once I applied these rules to my fridge, I was able to find ingredients easily. And I waste way less food now. I know that you are busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Please like and subscribe. And if you know someone who is struggling with an overstocked fridge, please share this video with them. Thanks for watching, and best wishes that somebody helps you with your dishes.